He was born a snake handler, and he'll die a snake handler. You're listening to Game Points with Matthew Ross on TSN 690. Follow him on Twitter at Matthew Words. Filling in today is Moe Khan. Follow him on Twitter at Moe Khan 19.
12:33 on Game Points Radio. Welcome back to TSN Radio 690. We're now joined by our good friend, a man who was a legend in the city of Montreal, Gabriel Morency. Gabriel, how you been, sir?
Hey, always a pleasure, Mo. How you doing?
Good. You know, the dog days of summer are almost over. College football around the corner. NFL not too far away. NHL camps begin in 4 weeks' time. So we're almost entering the meat of the sports season, my friend.
Yeah, unfortunately, the NHL season is already 4 weeks away. It's the shortest off season of all sports, and you know, listen, I love hockey as much as the next guy. Well, maybe not as much as some of the next guys in Montreal. I love the sport, man, but sometimes it's too much, and I'm starting to notice. I was watching TSN a couple hours ago, and I started to notice the ticker was all hockey stuff, and this guy signs with Ottawa, and this and that and the other thing, and you know, I've enjoyed the last couple of months of baseball headlines on the ticker and football talk on the ticker. But hey, it's that time of the year, and yeah, no, it's a great time of the year. It's great. You know, it's the best time of the year, in my opinion, is the end of September. You know, you're getting into week 3, week 4 of the National Football League. Conference play is starting in college football. And you've got the start of the NBA season's around the corner. You know, the first week of October is hockey, and then the baseball playoffs. For my money, that first week of October, you know, to me that's the best time of the sporting year. People, you know, you can make an argument about other times. You know, March Madness is a popular one, and the start of the baseball season and all that. But I think the end of September, early October is the best part of the year to be a sports fan.
We're in conversation with Gabriel Morency, the host of Game Time Decisions, weekdays at 3 p.m. on Fantasy Sports Network. Gabriel, quickly here, your thoughts on the Stephen Moore, Todd Bertuzzi settlement. Were you surprised this happened before the trial date in early September?
Well, you know, this is kind of embarrassing in the sense that it took so long. I don't think Todd Bertuzzi's a bad guy. You know, we've obviously spoken about this over the 28 years that it happened to go. But, you know, he's not a bad guy, but the way that he handled it after, the way that the NHLPA handled it after was pretty classless. Whether it was accidental or not, you know, the kid lost his career. And, you know, it was just so nasty after, in which, you know, it was thrown out there, well, he wasn't that good anyways, and, you know, well, whatever. There's a lot of guys that technically aren't that good that, you know, are multimillionaires after, you know, careers in the National Hockey League. So the guy lost his livelihood. I thought it was shameful the way the hockey community sort of turned on Moore. It was an unfortunate accident. Bertuzzi didn't mean to do it, but it happened. And the NHLPA and Bertuzzi and the NHL and everybody involved should be freaking ashamed that they took so long to pay the guy. They should have just paid him, you know, immediately, said we're sorry, instead of fighting it. It's pathetic. It's embarrassing. You know, the fact that this comes up just sort of angers me right now, you know, and it just sort of brings it all back and how the NHL handled this. It really is embarrassing. You know, like how could you fight this guy? You know, you broke his neck. Like there's no, and then it just turned into this, well, you know, that Crawford sent him out there and, oh, he wasn't that good anyways, and he was going to get cut, and how much money would he really made? It was just so freaking nasty. They should have paid him a long time ago. Well, they should have paid him 7 years ago, whenever it happened.
We're in conversation with Gabriel Morency on TSN Radio 690. Buffalo Bills, Jim Kelly, John Bon Jovi. Do you think this will happen? The tag team that no one thought would happen, potentially speaking here.
No, absolutely not. It's not happening. They got to give it up. Pagula is going to get the team. You know, he's the one. He's the one with the most credibility here. It's all nice, you know. Jim Kelly, and I, you know, all due, God bless him, you know, and I wish him the best of luck with his fight right now. But you know, how much money do people think Jim Kelly really has? Like this whole Jim Kelly thing. Like, you know, does Jim Kelly have $800 million, Mo?
I'm not too sure.
No. Well, how would he? How much? You know,
yeah.
You know, he was making $2 million a year playing the NFL. Like,
Right.
Like, how would he? Like, where's the money coming from? Like, am I missing something? Like, do I see him in Nike commercials, like on TV, where he's making $80 million a year? Like, this whole Jim Kelly thing, it's a nice little story, Jim Kelly, and his group, etc. Whatever. If anything, basically, whoever gets the team is going to bring Jim Kelly in, Mo. That's the way this is going to go down. Bon Jovi's desperate right now. He's on the outside looking in. It's not going to happen for him. There's a lot of turmoil with him and Tannenbaum and the Rogers group, as always. It's the same old usual suspects. They're all involved here. And Bon Jovi's just jumping ship. Bon Jovi would team with Donald Trump right now if he thought it was going to get him the team, but it's not going to happen. It's funny because they hate Bon Jovi in Buffalo. The goodwill's gone. They boycotted his music on all the radio stations, local bars and restaurants won't play his music. And now in Toronto, they're burning it. They burnt his CDs before the Argonaut game the other night because it was, so now he's got Argo fans hating him. He should just, take a step back, John. It was a nice try. I'm trying to come up with one of his songs. You're you're dead or alive, but you're kind of come up with something here, a cheesy one-liner. But my brain's kind of fried this week. But move on. You've got the money. Listen. There's a reason Bon Jovi's been hanging around in Kraft's luxury suite. He's been sucking up to Jerry Jones. He's buddies with that crowd. He's going to get in. Is it going to work in Buffalo? No, probably not. It's not happening. He's not going to win. He's not going to win this bid. It's not happening. He wasn't even the majority guy with the money. Bon Jovi's got money, but this is different type of money. Like Jim Kelly does. It's Jim Kelly doesn't have anywhere near that. So whatever happens in the end, I think they'll just bring Jim Kelly in. They'll give Jim 2%, 1%, or they'll name him ambassador type of thing. But I'm interested to get this thing over with, so to speak. It's just a little bit of a distraction right now. I don't think it is so much for the players and the coaching staff, but it's just a little bit of a circus right now. Let's just get this thing over with and move on.
We're in conversation with Gabriel Morency, the host of Game Time Decisions, weekdays at 3 p.m. on the Fantasy Sports Network. Describe Johnny Manziel's performance and how ugly this Browns quarterback situation is.
Well, it's to be expected, so I'm not actually surprised. It's the best word for it would almost be funny, in that I never root. Why would I root against some kid trying to make it in a National Football League? I don't watch college kids coming into the league, and so many of them have struggled. Derek Carr looks lost in Oakland. Right now, he got hurt unfortunately in the game, but nobody's mocking him. But nobody comes in and does a money sign. Nobody does these vines where he can't hear you because he has too much money. You spend the off season hanging around with Justin Bieber and Floyd Mayweather and getting wasted in Vegas, and you're Johnny Football and you're Johnny Cool, and you think you're just going to show up in a National Football League. And last night with him flipping the finger is just embarrassing, almost as embarrassing as ESPN not mentioning it, and almost as embarrassing as ESPN not mentioning the Washington Redskins actually all came out on the field with their hands up. But why would that be relevant? That has nothing to do with anything that's going on in the world right now. So why would they actually bring that up? The whole thing is sickening. It's a joke. This Coach Pettin comes in here. He has no control whatsoever. They've handled this horribly, almost as bad as the Ferguson cops, how not to handle a crowd and how not to handle a QB situation. You got a backup quarterback. Everybody knows he's not freaking ready to start in the National Football League, evidently except them. So instead of just letting the kid just get his reps in and say, listen, Hoyer's our starting quarterback, start the season and put Manziel in. It's not rocket science. And then you're alternating series. You have a guy who's the 22nd pick in the NFL draft that for some reason has a post-game press conference after every game. Why? Why? Because ESPN wants that, so you do it? It's like ESPN is making the call for the Cleveland Browns, and then you get these guys that come on, like Mortensen and Schefter, and it's comical, but it's okay because I make money off of this in the season because the public listens to these jackals, and actually, listens to and thinks, well, I heard Mortensen say this. I mean, all week, Mo, we've been hearing, all these so-called football experts, Schefter, Mortensen, Prisco, I'll go down the list, all of them. Well, with everything that Johnny's done in camp, it's really hard not to just give him the job. Because, you're right. Everything that he's done in camp. Teddy Bridgewater set a freaking National Football League preseason record. He set a record for a QB rating the other day. He had a QB rating of 136. He led two drives in the fourth quarter. He led a game-winning drive, and then Arizona scored, and then Teddy did it again. He was 16 of 20 running a real offense, not running this little, Johnny football. Let me dump it off. I haven't seen Johnny make one throw. Johnny football used to be a good scrambler in college against Rice. Yeah, that's all good. Last night, Johnny Manziel couldn't even get back to the line of scrimmage. He was so slow. The white guys, the third-string white guys, the D-lineman white guys on the Redskins were waiting for him, on the corners. He's got no speed at all. The Redskin players laugh at him on the field, and he flips them the bird. Now word's going to get out around the National Football League, like how thin-skinned this kid is. It's comical. He's nowhere near ready to be playing. And at this rate, the Cleveland Browns will give him the starting quarterback position. I mean, it's a complete mess. And they facilitate it. And ESPN builds this up, and Johnny football this, and Johnny that, and the NFL Network, and ratings this, and Johnny this. And they'll be the first ones to bury him after. They'll be the first ones to bury him. How's Tim Tebow doing right now? And people actually like Tim Tebow. Teammates like Tim Tebow. The media liked Tim Tebow. People don't like Johnny Manziel. As Boomer Esiason was saying on his radio show today in New York, that Johnny's already the most hated player in the NFL. Like, word is out. Like, people want to pop him. They're going to get him, and it's just going to fail. And Patton's a good guy, but he's got no power there. It's a complete joke. The owner of the Cleveland Browns is like, the guy's a shady rat type dude. The whole organization's a clown organization. The way they've handled this is horrible. And, whatever, man. They get what they deserve.
Gabriel, what do you have lined up for game time decisions today at 3 p.m. on the Fantasy Sports Network?
Quickly, I'm disappointed in asking me about Kovalev ripping Subban.
Oh, we can talk about that. Go ahead.
I just wanted to throw that in there.
Go for it.
I covered the Canadians in those days. I was doing the post-game show when Kovalev was on the team, and he made Mike Ribeiro look like Bob Gainey. All right? Really. And Mike Ribeiro actually Mike Ribeiro actually got good, because he wanted to make money. So, Ribeiro actually has competed. But in the days in Montreal, Ribeiro used to go for a skate, like the Ice Capades, and float around a bit and go to the club, and he was living the dream. But, Kovalev could play Peter Pan on Broadway, man. The guy floats so much. Like, for him to call out anybody, this guy's a clown, really. And I remember everyone in Montreal oohed and awed about him all the time. Oh, yeah, he hasn't scored, and he doesn't try, but, man, does he have a lot of skill. Yeah, he's a great stick handler. That's all good. Go to a skills competition. The guy's a crook. He ripped off the Canadians for years. He had a couple of good years when he was surrounded by Hall of Fame players, and then he coasted for another 13 years. He should be locked up and put in jail for theft, and he's criticizing people's contracts? It's insanity to me. It's freaking insanity to me. Like, it's just, of all guys, listen, Guy Lafleur called out Pacioretty. Listen, was it fair? No, but it's Guy Lafleur. So, you're like, all right, that's Guy Lafleur. He doesn't like Max. It was a little unjustified at the time, but it's Guy Lafleur. Who the hell is Alexei Kovalev to be talking about anybody? The guy should shut up. The word Montreal, PK, or Subban shouldn't come out of this guy's freaking mouth for the rest of his life. He should be embarrassed for the money that he stole from the Canadians organization. And this jerk-off's going to be talking about PK Subban and the style of play that he plays from the most offensive, the most, Kovalev was the biggest-ass floater in the history of the NHL. Like, he'd be on the all-float team. And this guy's ripping Subban. It's comical. Really. What a jackass. That's all I'll say about him. But as far as the show tomorrow, I didn't get a chance to hit this today because, there's so much stuff going on. We've been NFL heavy, and I always say, you don't start talking about college football I don't do my college football previews too far in advance, Mo, because all these kids get kicked off the team, they get arrested, they get suspended, or they get injured.
Right.
So with Braxton Miller's big injury today, tomorrow we're going to talk some college football, how this affects the college football futures. The Buckeyes they were going to make it to the Final Four. They were going to make it to the new playoff. I don't think they are anymore. This isn't the old Buckeyes where their defense is going to get it done. Their defense is terrible. The Buckeyes have evolved into a run and gun spread offense type of let's rack up 50 points and win this game. They're not going to be able to do it with this quarterback out of Texas. He's kind of stiff. Obviously Urban Meyer is one of the best coaches of all time, but he's going to win football games. But I think you scratch Ohio State right now for making the Final Four.
I hear Urban Meyer is going to ask for a 5th year for Tim Tebow.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you say that because Urban Meyer was talking the other day about he doesn't understand how Tim Tebow is not a starting quarterback in the NFL, which reminds you why Urban Meyer is a college coach and not an NFL coach. But Braxton Miller actually is going to apply for the 5th year.
And
Miller's
should get
going to be
it
back
though.
Next year. And good for him. Miller's a good kid. It's too bad. Even as a Michigan fan, I hate to see it. And I don't know what the connection is, but Miller is often seen wearing Montreal Expo hats. I've always tried to figure out why and what the deal is. If does he have an uncle that played for the Expos or whatever? I've never found out why Miller wears Expos gear, but he does.
I'll have to ask around. I'll find out for you, Gabriel. I'll get the answer for you.
You do that, Mo. Come on, you should be able to figure something like that out.
I'll get that figured out. Gabriel, as always, a pleasure to converse with you, my friend. Next week, college football begins, and we'll definitely talk college football with you next Tuesday, my friend.
Hey, always a pleasure, Mo.
Take care. Gabriel Morency. You can follow him on Twitter at Sports Rage. Host of Game Time Decisions weekdays at 3 p.m. on the Fantasy Sports Network. Gabriel Morency. Coming up next, the final turn of Game Points Radio on TSN Radio 690. Your home of the Habs, Owls and Impact, TSN Radio 690.